just wanted to take some time to go through some of our work from home solutions just so everyone can be prepared and get this deployed as fast as possible with the upcoming coronavirus restrictions and everything. So for today, we'll go ahead and start with Abby Quinn, our customer success manager. She'll be going through Teams, some of the features such as calendar coordination, notifications and settings, and then we'll kick it off with Catherine McSweeney and Ruth Delaney, and they'll go through our community crisis app from our Power Platform, and then we'll pass it along to Mitch Jackson to discuss Windows Virtual Desktop. So throughout the time, feel free to drop some questions in the chat, and we'll address them throughout. And just stay on mute for now since we have a good amount of people, and we will be recording this. So with that, I will pass it along to Abby Quinn.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. And thank you guys all for joining this afternoon. We've got a pretty good turnout today. Happy to see that. Not so happy about the circumstances why we're all increasing our telework. But as Alex said before, my name is Abby Quinn. I'm a customer success manager, and I work in the federal space exclusively. As she said before, please feel free to throw some questions. Now everyone's muted. Can everybody see my screen? If you don't mind throwing that in the chat window, it should look like a Teams environment. You should see a purple bar around. I'm going to check out the chat really quick. And throughout the meeting, I will be doing, okay, great, everybody can see. So I'm going to show the menu bar over here. This is the Teams menu bar, and as I touch on each category, I will pause and ask for questions. If you do get unmuted, sometime there is an echo, so just love that, please, and I appreciate it. So Teams is the all-inclusive hub for collaboration that Microsoft has put recently a bunch of time and energy into, and given the circumstances of a lot of federal agencies turning to more remote work right now, it's a great opportunity to take a chance to explain how functionality works and how it can help your workday, even if you're not in the office. I'm going to start today off with chat, which is going to have a lot of the features and functionality that you're used to seeing in Skype for Business, if that's what you use. Some features that you're used to using, like an iMessage or Facebook Messenger, it's going to have some of those capabilities. And Alex, I'm not going to be looking for question and answer. Anything urgent, will you pause me and let me know if there's any?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
thanks.
I'll monitor.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So for the sake of this kind of demonstration, I'm in what you would call a demo environment. So this is a kind of like a canned demonstration Teams. And so for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to be, my name is really creative. I am Mod Administrator, and I am talking to my friend Johanna, and she's actually Catherine McSweeney. So, hey, Kat. To send a message, you can do it multiple ways. The easiest, most straightforward, if you want to create a new chat, is to click this little pin with a dialog box around it, and to go ahead and type in the person's name that you're trying to reach out to. It should pre-populate based on your Active Directory. And just like you're used to, I go ahead down here to the message bar and say, hey, Johanna, are you there? Of course, I'm being watched, so I can't type at all, or I'm trying to type too fast. Oh, okay, so there you go. Kind of like the iMessage functionality, we've got the 3 ellipses indicating to us that she is going ahead and typing. Thank you, my real name. So there you go. That's just a basic one-on-one chat. What's unique about Teams is that everything that you're doing here is going to remain persistent. So as you can see, unlike Skype, when you leave a message and type another person's name in to start a message, and you have to start the conversation from ground zero, we've got a persistent chat that stays retained, which is a little bit easier to find things, a little bit easier for searching, and also just a little bit easier to stay refreshed on what you and your colleagues are talking about. One thing that I think is helpful, especially kind of in this crisis mode as you're organizing and getting ready to, maybe you're having conversations with the same group of people. And one of the good things about Teams is it does offer some customization when it comes to your conversation panel over here, your chat panel. And you can actually click this ellipses to get more options, which will allow you to pin conversations. And then you can see Johanna just got moved up here to the top where she can be constantly found. I don't have to scroll down chronologically to find her name. A little blurb for organization and kind of however you want to structure your own teams. One of the great things about chat is you do have a lot of other capabilities down here. You can see there's some buttons down here. You've got a formatting A with like a little paintbrush, which allows you to actually format a more professional message. It's got some of the functionality you're used to seeing in Outlook or Microsoft Word. You can hold things. You can justify it differently. You can also insert links and quotes. And you can also, of course, send that as a more professional kind of paragraph or message. Let's say that I don't know, that I actually spelled something wrong here. You can hover over it and you'll see these ellipses again, which allow you to edit or delete a message. And only you as the person who sent the message will be able to see that it's been deleted. If you edit it, it will say edited, but that's a great feature. I know a lot of us can type really fast or we get excited and might not necessarily make the perfect message. So deleting is great. You can also attach files. Everyone should be pretty familiar with this paperclip. Similar to Outlook, you can attach files from your OneDrive or from your computer. You've got stickers down here, kind of emojis. One of the things around why Teams is really, being focused on is because it does offer a level of rich communication that helps convey tone, helps convey kind of moral, morale and spirit. We've incorporated some of the social networking features that you see on Instagram and Facebook, but it's still professional. You can moderate these to make them a certain rating. So GIFs can be strict or moderate or, no rules, but they are obviously going to be relatively work appropriate. You've also got the ability to make your own memes or stickers. I won't spend too much time on those. They're pretty self-explanatory, but this other button down here is going to be, you can immediately schedule a meeting from a chat itself. Let's say that Johanna and I are talking a lot today and I realize, it would just be better to schedule something. You click on that, it opens up a invite, which essentially does follow a lot of formatting that you're used to whenever you create a new meeting in Outlook. So I could fill this out and schedule a meeting with Johanna super easy, and I don't have to switch screens. Going to take a pause right there and go check out our questions, see if we've got anything going on. I know that I might be moving a little bit fast. There's a lot of features in Teams. Let's see. Nothing so far. I don't think. Okay, awesome. I will keep going. So I actually will go ahead and schedule a meeting with Johanna so that after I go through chats, we can check out what it looks like to have a meeting. So let's do, I'm not gonna be too unoriginal here. I'm just gonna do Teams training. That'll be our meeting. I want it to be for today, so March 12th. And then it actually does have scheduling assistant in here, so I can see itself is free. If there were more people in this invite, I would also be able to see that within Teams. And I'm going to go ahead and make it for, let's do 3:30. Wow, how did they go that far out? There we go. If you click back, you can go ahead and add agenda. You can type messages here. You can add attachments. If you wanted to, you could add them to the chat itself. But you could also invite more people, or you could, and I'll explain this a little bit later, but you could actually invite an entire channel. So I will go ahead and schedule that between myself and Johanna, and I will show you guys what that meeting experience looks like here in a bit. Okie doke. So another really great functionality of Teams that is one of the reasons why it's being adopted so rapidly is this attach file. So I'm just going to attach a random file from my OneDrive. I'll probably pick a PowerPoint. Let's go see. And I would be able to select from here and click that message or click that file, and I could send it to her. It would have a status bar, and I could select send. But for the sake of our demonstration, I'll actually just go into files itself, which is another point to make. Up here, you've got what we call tabs, and those are unique to each chat that you're going to be involved with. You can also add different tabs to multiple user chats. But you can see you've got your chat, which is your conversations back and forth. And then you also have this tab files. So this alleviates the stress of, oh my gosh, who sent me that file? Where did it go? Every file shared between you and the other person or the other people in this chat will be stored underneath this file tabs. So you can see that we've actually already shared some before. And Johanna, if you don't mind actually going ahead and clicking on sample budget, so we can show everybody what it looks like whenever there are two people co-authoring a document. And you can see that it's actually not even opening up Excel on my desktop. It opens it in Teams. You can select to edit in a desktop application or in the browser, or you can just stay in Teams. For the sake of our demonstration, I will just be staying in Teams so that you can see that it really is a pretty awesome environment. You don't have to switch a bunch of screens. You're not going back and forth, trying to figure out, you know, where was that last version I edited? And you can see that I'm here in the document, and I can actually make edits here that when, oh, there she is. So there is Johanna. She just joined. We are co-authoring together. I can tell that she's in the document by looking up here. And I can also see exactly where she is within the document itself based on where this little kind of purple cursor ellipses is. So any changes that she makes right now will happen in real time. I do not have to, you know, approve them or accept them. If I needed to, I could still do track changes. That feature would happen in the desktop application, and it's going to be updated in real time. You can also still restore version history. All of the capabilities that you're used to are still going to function and run in Teams. One of the other great things here is you can actually continue your chat. So if I click on the dialog box up here in the right-hand corner, I can say, you know, hey, Johanna, I see you're editing this document. Let's check out, can you double check row 3? No, that's just the titles. Let's do row 10. And that, you know, kind of replaces the functionality of comments, but allows you to really have those conversations while you're collaborating. So the permissions and policies of a document are dictated by the original creator of that document. So I created this document in my environment and then I sent it to Johanna. That would mean that I'm the person who can ultimately determine if the document or the Excel workbook needs to be locked down. So if there was like a final version that we had decided on, I could lock it down from my own portal or for my own Excel. Awesome. See, she just responded. I see that she responded, and instead of saying, okay, cool, or okay, thanks, I can actually just hover over this message and give her a thumbs up, indicating that I have seen this message and, you know, she can tell I'm going to hold her accountable to checking that row 10. So this is a great way as far as, you know, if you're not used to being remote, you're used to doing things kind of conference style when you're editing a document, but you now are going to be teleworking. This is a great option for co-authoring documents and for definitely holding other people accountable within chat itself. So I think this document looks great. I'm going to go ahead and close out. Hopefully she double checks that row 10. I do think I have a chat. Let me go check really quick for questions. Oh, okay. So when you upload or make changes to the docs, are they associated SharePoint site? Yes. So every time that you make a team, you are actually making a SharePoint site in the kind of behind the scenes. Every time you're sharing files in a one-to-one chat, it is actually stored in OneDrive. In a one-to-many chat or in a team or channel, all of that correspondence is stored on SharePoint. So great question. Yes, there is SharePoint on the back end of this as well as Outlook groups. So. Good question.
And Abby, it looks like we have one more question there.
Yep.
Can you have multiple windows open in Teams as you can with Skype for Business?
I'm assuming that this is probably someone who has multiple screens of some sort and wants to be able to drag those screens to accommodate for multiple monitors. Is that right? I'm going to go with yes. And yeah, currently, it depends on your environment and your tenant. Commercial and non-government tenants should have access to what is called the pop-out chat. I don't think that's in my environment for this demonstration, but what it would look like, for example, if I wanted to pull the afternoon meeting chat to another monitor, you'd be able to select that ellipses next to it, and it would have kind of like a square with an arrow pointing out, and that would allow you to pop that out as another screen. I think that if you do have the capability, it would also appear kind of where this little logo with the plus or the people with the plus sign is, there should be a little pop-out screen as well. If you are in government, that is not yet available as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, team, if that's been updated, but I don't believe that it's yet available in GCC.
Yeah, pop-out chats are not available in GCC right now.
Yeah, so since they are commercial, expect them in the time frame anywhere between, and I hate to give a quote on time frame because who knows, you know, we hope that things that happen in commercial happen 30 days later in GCC, but I would expect that within the next 6 months that there would be some sort of pop-out ability available to government environments. But there was also a question about the recording. Yes, this is recorded, and I'm going to give it to Alex once I download it, and it will be able to be viewed on demand. Again, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the plan, yeah?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we went over these options. I guess next up is you'll see on your tabs along the top here, there is a button called Organization. And again, since I'm in this demonstration environment, that might not actually have a bunch of content, but when you select Organization in a chat, you should be able to see where somebody stands within the company hierarchy, who their manager is, what their job title is. This is a great functionality, especially for maybe those of us that want to make sure we're not emailing someone's manager, or to find answers and resources. This activity tab is kind of like the See Friendship button on Facebook. It kind of just shows exactly what things I've been corresponding with Johanna about over the course of our time together as colleagues and coworkers. You can see this budget, which is actually going to just be that we just talked about. I pinned this as a tab because the use case here is, let's say you're working on a document constantly, once or twice a week, and it has to be finished in 6 weeks. A great opportunity to pin tabs is to actually pin the documents themselves here, so that you have them, super quick recall, never have to forget where they are. And if I had another document that I wanted to add, I would simply click this tab button or this add a tab button. And you can see that a lot of our Office 365 products are actually pre-populated here. Those are all tabs that you can add to a chat itself. If I wanted to add a specific Word document, I would be able to find it there. If I wanted to do PowerPoint, I'd be able to find it there. And depending on your environments, you might see some more tabs available in this section. So that is tabs. I'm going to go back to our chat. Got a notification. Let's see. Any more questions? Can you search on topics from old team meetings? I will just show you guys. The search functionality in Teams is pretty awesome. This search bar up here allows you to search by person or keyword. It actually also allows you to, if you do a / it gives you a list of shortcuts. And these are all things that you can just select by clicking one button, and it'll take you to files. It'll take you to a meeting or join a team, I mean. So this is great. The search functionality, if I had a meeting, let's say Teams training, because that was the meeting from past weeks, I could search it there and it would take me to those meetings themselves where there were posts made, and I could easily recall that meeting information. So I think search is pretty great. One thing to note, if you do type in a person's name and so let's say I'm typing in Johanna's, type the name all the way in and select enter, like press the enter button on your keyboard, it will take you to everything that person has posted before, like all the things and topics they've posted in Teams. But if you select this, this image here and her name, it will take me to the chat, to our one-on-one. So if you're searching for posts, do the full name and select enter on your keyboard. Just a little nuanced detail. Is there a way to change the resolution? I notice your icons are a lot smaller than mine. I will answer this whenever I go over settings. If you'll just hang tight, I can answer this. It's just another piece of the menu bar. Okay, so one of the other things that you can do within chat is, let's say that Johanna and I have been working on something, but we now know that we need to actually add more individuals into this chat, and we want it to be a little bit more collaborative. So up here at the top, you'll see in your right-hand corner, there's 2 people, and it actually, if I hover over it, it says add people to the chat. So we're gonna add Bob, and we're gonna add Diego, and we're gonna add Shoni to our chat. And this creates a new conversation. Anytime that you go over 3 people in a chat, you're actually given the option to either let's do Deborah. Oh wait. If there's content already in the meeting, you are able to actually, there are options that allow you to include people on all of that chat history or to let them only see what's being added now. So you can see now this option has been added here. So if I add Deborah, select her name, it allows me to either do, I don't have to include any chat history, I can include history from a certain number of days, or I can include in all chat history, which will include files that have been shared previously, which is a great feature. Definitely don't want to, start over from square one with everyone every time you add somebody. So this helps with people. You can kind of say, make sure you read through the chat, make sure you check the files that have been shared. And so this is also a cool feature. You can rename the group so that you're not confused. We're going to call this the Teams. I swear, I use Teams training all the time. Teams training group 3. You can rename it so you don't accidentally ping anyone that you don't mean to. This is just a really great way to stay organized. And again, I can pin this to the top by clicking on this ellipses. I can pin it to the top of my chat panel, and they are going to stay right there. So a question that I often get is, can you delete a chat? And the answer is no. It's actually going to exist in OneDrive no matter what. It's going to be discoverable. If you had a chat correspondence with another person or people, it's going to be discoverable. But what you can do for those that don't love to have, tons and tons of stuff right here, and maybe you want to organize a little better, you can click this ellipses and you can hide that. So it is going to go away from view, but if Bob ever messaged me, he would pop right back up. I didn't block Bob or restrict him in any way from chatting me. Another option with notifications is you can do your ellipses and you can click mute. And that just means that maybe you're not super active, you still want visibility, but that chat is not super active, and so you're just going to mute notifications for it. So those are 2 kind of best practices for those of us that like to stay organized. Pause again. Oh, great. Thank you, Nia. Awesome. I got my team helping out with questions. Appreciate it. Okay, so on that note, I will switch over to Microsoft Teams, this little kind of 3-person logo. I will say that in my experience, one of the rules of thumb is if you're chatting with 10 or more people in a group chat, it's probably a good idea to at least investigate if it should be its own team. Because if you have that many people collaborating and sharing documents and co-authoring them, it might be a good idea to go ahead and create a team. So a team is your work group. It's the people that you work with every day. It's the project groups that you're on. It's your virtual team. It's your physical in-office team. It is kind of what your organization chooses to make it, or what your work group chooses to kind of set parameters around. Something to note is that if you are in the team, and for the purpose of today, we will be using this finance team for a lot of my demonstration. You are in the finance team, you are by default, actually you are able to see every other thing in these channels. So if I'm in finance, I can also see what's in general, I can see what's in business taxes and licenses, and so on. By default, every team is created and it has a general channel. And so to go back to that SharePoint question, there is a finance SharePoint site, and then each channel creates its own document folder or document library underneath it. So general would have its own folder, business taxes and license would have its own folder, and those would all contain the correspondence that's made within those channels. Depending on your organization, you might or might not have the power and ability to create your own team at this point. If you have questions about that, I would direct them to your organization's help desk, or perhaps someone that's in IT and can answer that for you. But if you do have the capability to create a team, you can go ahead and go down here. There's join or create a team, and when you select this, you should be able to see all of your organization's public teams. And again, I'm in a demo environment, so you're not going to see any here because it's just for demonstration purposes. But If I wanted to create a team, I would select create team. And I can either do one of two things. I can build a team from scratch, or I can create it from an existing Office 365 group. I am going to click build a team from scratch. This is where I would be able to designate if it's going to be private or wide. Relatively self-explanatory, but private just basically means that an owner of that team would need to grant you access if you wanted to become a member. Public means anybody can join. If they have the team name or a link to the team, they can click join and they automatically are granted access. And org wide, which it might be something that is happening a little bit more rapidly right now, given everything that's going on, is obviously something where everyone in the agency is involved and will get notifications based on that team. So I guess I will click public just for the sake of our demo. Give your team a name, add a description, and boom, there you go. That's all there is to it. I will pause here again and take some questions. How many teams is too many? If you find yourself in 100 teams, managing and participating in them, could you, I can't scroll down. What does that say after that? Could you what?
It says how many teams is too many teams. If you find yourself in 100 teams, managing and or participating in them could be difficult. That's it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I don't know why my screen will not scroll down. That's very weird. But that's a great question. And one of the things that we often find happens whenever companies or organizations first turn teams on is they do see a lot of teams creation, and it can be a little bit overwhelming at times. So the kind of the word of advice there is ask yourself if you really need to create a team, or is if this something, you know, that only 3 people are going to be working on? Could we just do a group chat? But I will also go into some ways that help kind of organizing this take place. So let's say that for this DOT training, I actually am going to be able to kind of mute this one because I'm not super active in this team, or I can actually hide it, which just means that it's not going to be in my view. But if I do have any other hidden teams, you just access them by this drop-down menu that's created here. And then you can still see them. You can handle the notifications that you want based on what you want for hidden teams. If you're going to get notified every single time something's posted, but you'll also notice that you've got some bold here, which basically means there is something in this channel that I have not yet seen. And that kind of helps me organize, okay, these are unread, I need to check on them. And that corresponds with what we'll talk about at the very end, your activity bell. So you might find yourself in a few too many teams right at the beginning when Teams gets turned on. But one of the things that you can do is you can set expiration policies after 60, 90 days or 6 months of inactivity. Teams automatically get deleted. And that kind of helps with some of that initial, oh my gosh, I'm excited, I want to make a team excitement that we get whenever people first turn Teams on. Okay.
I also just shared the best practices.
Oh, okay, thank you. And Nia just put in a link into the chat, which is our best practices in regards to organizing teams. Thank you, Nia. Moving right along. So basically, I like to kind of think of, you know, remember the days when we had binders and trapper keepers before every 4-year-old got an iPad, and we actually had to organize things. I think of, you know, my binder as my team and kind of exactly what that sounds like. So the whole binder is the team itself. And then you know how you had like math, science, history. I haven't been in school in a minute. It's hard to remember all the subjects. But you have all those divided into, you know, with dividers and tabs. So that's what's really great about here is you're going to be able to manage the conversations and channels through kind of like a subcategory depending on the taxonomy that you choose to use within your organization. So general, obviously, is going to have some all hands material, things like that, big announcements. And this is a great spot where you can actually post things like, hey guys, here's our here's what's going on with our telework and how we're going to be handling remote. Having an opportunity, you can make announcements here or posts. The owner of a team can dictate if they want everyone to be able to reply or not. If you have an important announcement that needs to go out to multiple channels and multiple teams, you can select those teams here. And all of this formatting should be relatively similar to that of Outlook and Word, all things that you're used to. Another thing to note, I'll go to one that's a little less busy, but you can post, or you can, add more tabs here too as well. And these are all visible by the people in the team. So for example, one that we frequently use and one that I think will be super helpful is Planner. And Planner actually allows you to assign tasks. I don't know if anyone on the call has used Planner, but we use it internally quite a bit, and it's a great resource, especially whenever it's crunch time and you're trying to get something done really fast, which sounds like. So we're going to call this crisis plan. Save that. And it gets pinned to the top, and then I'm able to create buckets basically. So let's say that for this crisis plan, we know that we're going to need somebody who's in charge of announcements, someone who's in charge of, formal meeting invitations. I don't know. You can add new buckets and change different titles here. And once I add a task, I can create a name. So let's say create comms plan. Set a due date here, and I'm going to make that for tomorrow because we're working hard. And you can assign that to anyone that's within the team or channel that you're working with. So I'm going to do 2 people, and I'm going to click add that task. And so they each should have just gotten an email that they were just given a new plan and they were assigned a new task. And as a member of this team or channel, I can actually view all of the tasks that are out there. I can see their status. If one person changes them, I can see that. And then let's say I really want to get an overview of everything in the entire month. You'd be able to do that here under schedule. So this is a really great feature, and it definitely helps with holding people accountable. The other big perk here is that it all does reside in Teams. You're not switching a bunch of screens, and that is kind of where the essence of using Microsoft Teams. I am going to jump over really quick, make sure. I'm going to go ahead and jump into calendar. I know that I am running out of time a little bit, so I talk a lot. But let's go ahead and talk calendar. I know that meetings is going to be a big focus right now, and there are 2 ways to schedule meetings, 3 technically if you count the button that exists in your Outlook, which you should see now. If you don't see it now, it might be under new items if it just recently was installed. Teams was. And you can see here, you can actually create a meeting up here in the right-hand corner. You can schedule a new meeting by pressing this purple button. And it takes you again to that same kind of what we're familiar with interface. This is awesome because you can actually post a meeting to an entire channel. So let's say that I was going to do finance again and I wanted to post a meeting. I would say mandatory remote FAQ session. Finance channel, or the whole finance team actually. I'm going to make that for today at 4. That sounds good. And then you could add an agenda there if you'd like to. There's also scheduling assistant here as well. And if it was just an individual that I was scheduling a meeting with, Teams would actually suggest times that were available for both parties. So I like that feature a lot. It makes scheduling super easy. Okay, great. Johanna, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and grab and join that meeting that we scheduled earlier after this is done loading. So you guys can see, since I posted it to the channel, it went to that channel. I don't know why my computer won't scroll. It would post to the channel and people can join directly from that channel. So I'm going to click, you can join a meeting one of 2 ways. You can click this little button right here that says join, or I can actually select the meeting. Let's say I needed to take a look at what the agenda was. I could join here. Let's say that I'm actually going to be running a little bit late and I need to chat with the participants beforehand and let them know that my other call is running over. Or if I had a document I wanted to share with them, I could select this chat with participants and say, hey guys, look this over before the meeting. See y'all there. But I'm going to select join, and it takes me to the Teams powder room where I can either, right now it's by default on, but you can select to turn your camera off and turn your mute on. You can also here, you can check devices and make sure that your headset's all good and that you're making sure that anything, if you're going to use your camera, make sure you're using the right one. It's a kind of sounds like a thing you should not necessarily have to think about, but it's an important detail. So I'm going to select join now. I just realized I spelled trading wrong. Thanks guys for catching me on that. It's connecting here, and I will be taken into kind of like a a meeting room. Oh, Johanna's now available. I wonder if she's going to join me in here. But here is your menu bar for meetings specifically. Here you can turn your camera on or off. I love having the camera on. I think that it's a great way to kind of, again, hold people accountable, make sure people are paying attention, but also be a little bit more engaged with your team that you're talking to. This is your mute and unmute. This is your share tray, which is desktop sharing, like you're very familiar with, I'm sure, but it does allow you to kind of pick and choose which share things you want to do. If I just wanted to pick one PowerPoint, I could do that, and it wouldn't close out of that PowerPoint even if I switched screens myself. The ... is going to give us a few more options. And in your tenant, if you guys are kind of going along with me here, you should see an option that says blur background, which is an awesome feature if you do use your camera, or if you institute a policy that does say, you know, try to use your video as much as possible. You can blur the background. So if you're working remote at Starbucks, or if you're maybe in your home office and you don't want anyone to see the dishes in your sink in the background, blurring the background is a great option. Again, here you can look at your device settings. You can open up what we call meeting notes, which are kind of like a OneNote, but they're attached to specific meetings. This is a great feature, and it's pinned as a tab in the meeting conversation or in the channel. You can also enter full screen. You can dial in someone if you need to. You can start a recording if you need to. This dialog box here is where your conversation is going to be. And then over here, you can actually see if anyone were else in the meeting. She's accepted, but she's not here right now. I would be able to see accepted, declined, unknown, or tentative, all over here. I can also go ahead and call people in if I want to by using the keypad, or invite someone right here. I can dial their number or write their name in, and it will pull them in to the meeting. I'm going to go check our Q&A. This demo that I'm showing you right now is in Government Community Cloud. So the features I'm showing you, minus a few, it's Government Community Cloud, but it's also in a browser. So there are a little bit of like some things that aren't available. That's why you can't see the blur background option. But if you're at home with your device or at work with your device, you should be able to join a meeting and blur the background itself. And lastly, I'm just going to be going over up here. And this is kind of something that if you don't know it, you don't know it. But if you go up here to your right-hand corner and you click the either your headshot or your initials or your name, perhaps, it will actually open up another box of options. This is where you can change your picture. You can change your presence, and available, obviously, it means contact me, let's go, we're good. Busy, self-explanatory. Do not disturb means you will not get notifications except for individuals that have priority access for you. And then be right back and appear away. Another great function here in Teams, which kind of serves as like an out of office should you need it, or maybe you're heads down focusing on a project all day and you want your colleagues to know that. Or for my job, I can say, hi, I am on site, expect delayed responses. It's like a great way, if someone tries to chat me, they will see this and they'll know like, hey, she's not ignoring me, I'm just, I need to wait a little bit. You can set these for today, this week, customize it for 365 days, should you like, an hour. And it kind of brings me back to the days of AOL Instant Messenger and away messages. This is where all of your saved messages or posts are going to be located. So if I wanted to save a post or a message, I would simply go to that message and I would hover over those ellipses again. And I would select save this message. And it goes and it appears over here. And I can always go back to that. Again, quick recall, perhaps there's a conversation or a question out there with your team that someone is hunting the answer down for, and you want to make sure that you have access to that and don't forget. Saved messages are great. They kind of function as like bookmarks that you would use in your browser. And last but not least, notification settings. Very important as we go into, potentially transitioning to more remote work. How are you going to be notified? They're right here. I got there by clicking this picture and selecting settings, and notifications was under that. So I do recommend, there's kind of 3 levels of notifications within Teams. Banner and email is like the most aggressive of them. That means you're going to get an email and you're going to get a notification on your desktop. Banner would just mean a desktop notification, and only show in feed would mean that it would only show up as like a red dot or number in your activity bell section of the menu bar. So for the sake of right now, if you are not used to using Teams and neither is your work group, I would suggest kind of doing banner and email because it is going to be the most contact. But you can customize these how you like, play around with it, see what works best for you. Another thing, if you are in Do Not Disturb, one of the things that you might want to avoid is ignoring your boss if they need you urgently. So you can manage priority access and add someone here, which means that you will still get a notification even if you're on Do Not Disturb. With that, I'm going to take a look back at question and answer and then turn it over to Catherine and Ruth. Okay, when you are in a meeting and people aren't using video, only audio, how do you know who's talking? That's a great question. So what would happen in that instance is you would be basically in a room full of it'd be a screen and you would see different squares with people's headshots in it. And whoever is speaking, their headshot or their initials kind of blooms purple. It'll look like outline around their picture or their initials. And that indicates who is talking. And if they are using video, Teams will automatically move to the person who's talking, and the person who's speaking will populate their square in the conference. I don't see meeting notes, just meeting info. Are you in a, is it a scheduled meeting or is it just a call that you made? Because it might, if it's not a scheduled meeting, it's not going to appear with meeting notes. Okay, I know that was a very fast overview, everyone. I appreciate your time. I am going to stop sharing now and turn it over to Catherine. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And we will be sharing this demo out for everybody and having one again next week.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby. I will go ahead and share my screen, but I'll be super quick because like Abby, oh, there's Johanna doing her thing. Like Abby, I think the demonstration will be the more powerful aspect of this, but I did want to talk about kind of crisis management and using the Power Platform. And before we kind of dive in to what Microsoft has created, especially in response to what's going on, I did want to kind of give an overview of the Power Platform because I see some familiar names on the call, but I know there might be some of you that have not heard of or worked with the Power Platform. So the way we see it, there's 4 different buckets of our Power tools. The first is Power BI, which I'm assuming that at least most of you have heard of, and this is our business analytics platform. Still low code, no code as the entire platform is, but it allows you to create dashboards and really analyze your data effectively. The second is Power Apps, which is what we'll be focused on today, which is low code, no code application development. This is kind of the action portion and where you'll see kind of our crisis management app really come to life. Next is Power Automate, which is the workflow engine and automation portion of the Power Platform. We've seen this being used in all sorts of different capacities and is really one of the core pieces of this Power Platform. Last but not least is Power Virtual Agents, which as you can see, it has an asterisk, and that's because it is not yet in GCC, but it is coming and we are so excited, but that will be low code, no code bots. So that's going to be the ability that any, citizen developer, if they really wanted to, would be able to create a bot. And we're really excited about bringing this to the government, especially for different types of FAQ and just really making sure that constituents are having a great experience with the federal government online. All of this is built on the Common Data Service, which is our way of sorting your data and making sure it is of high data integrity. But if it is not in the Common Data Service, we also have our data connectors to meet your data where you're at. If you'd like to know more than just the one-sentence description of the Power Platform, we're happy to go into it, but I know the reason we're all here today is the Crisis Management Power App. So I wanted to include a screenshot, although I am going to pass it to Ruth here in a second to really show you guys what it looks like. But as you can see here, it is super clean and simple and basic, and this is very much so intentional. We know that people only need what they need to know. There's so much information. I'm sure we've all seen the news coming at us from 100 different directions, but this is a way for you to communicate with your employees in a really streamlined fashion. And she'll go into kind of each of these sections later on. In addition, there has been a good amount from Microsoft and different MVPs, which are people who are kind of developers that don't necessarily work at Microsoft, on how to get it. So this is the site that we will be sending out afterwards about how to use this template. So this is basically built out, and then you can fill it in with all of your information later. And this is the step-by-step instructions with screenshots of how to implement this today. So that's been super helpful. In addition, I think going off of what Abby said, there's another article that I have recently found where they talk about how Teams and the Power Platform can work together. And it goes through a lot of what Abby just mentioned and how it's being used in crisis communication specifically, as well as how it integrates with our crisis management app. Again, with step-by-step instructions, with screenshots. Actually, I think this one has mini videos in it too, but lots of great documentation. And I'll make sure that these links are included as well. Last but not least, I think the download is included on that site, but if not, and I know we've got some IT folks here on the call, this is the GitHub site where you can also download it. The download pack is included, the documentation, it's all right there as well. So there's a couple different places where you can go and find it and really get started, because we know that you guys like this disease. Everyone is working very quickly, getting things done as fast as possible to make sure that everyone has the necessary information. So that is basically the 2-minute high-level overview. And Ruth, I think it's your time to shine and show them what the application will actually look like.
Great, thank you. So let me know if you can hear me.
We got you, Ruth.
Okay. So as Catherine mentioned, this is really a sample that a number of our team have built to allow you to kind of coordinate your own information sharing and team collaboration in response to, you know, the evolving conditions in terms of a crisis. The crisis doesn't have to just be the coronavirus, but that's the immediate need right now. And as Catherine mentioned, this solution, just so you know, behind the scenes, combines the capability of the Power Applications, which was the app, the automation or Power Automate, which allows me to send notifications to my users. So if I need to send out a notification that the offices are closed or there's schools are closed, whatever that information might be, I have the ability to send out those notifications behind the scenes without having to go into Teams automatically. And we can use Teams really as that central area to aggregate the data and respond to issues if need be. And behind the scenes, all the data could either be stored in that common data service that Catherine mentioned, but that does require special licensing. So if you don't have the special licensing, you can put it in SharePoint Online, which is what we've done for this sample scenario, so that you don't need to have a special license. This can be deployed both on the web, in a web browser, or in a mobile device, or in Teams. So I've actually got it, I created it to deploy it on a web browser. The only difference is, you can see there's my messages. The only difference is the way it's reflected in the mobile device. So for presentation's sake, I'm showing it up here. So this app actually creates 2 different applications, one called the Crisis Communication app, and one called the admin app, which is really where I would set up some of this information. Now, I also wanted to point out, because this was from a Teams scenario, that you can also integrate these into your Teams environments. So you'll notice that we have, or I created a crisis information team. Actually, the sample will have you do this. So you can create a team who can be maybe manage your app notifications or messages, or maybe this is your admin group, or maybe it's everybody that you want to be able to include in this group. And from here, within this channel, I've actually used the plus sign and added a tab for both my crisis communication app that you see above and the admin app. So I can get to it from here, the web browser, my mobile device. I can even click on this link where it was added, but we'll just look at it from here. So one of the things I can do is, oh, for instance, let me share my status. Well, maybe I want to make sure that I want to let everyone know I'm working from home today through tomorrow. So I can submit that. And you'll notice that information got submitted. I can say who I want to submit that information to. I'm just going to say everybody for demo's sake. And I'm going to go ahead and share that. Go ahead and click there. I can also update my status. I'll be working from home. I can have an auto reply, in essence, submit. I can also make a request. So, I am home and need help. I don't know. So I can make a request. When I make this request, and you can see automatic replies are on, I can go back to my home. We have an automatic workflow that's going to send that to the Teams channel so that that emergency request or whatever it might be is there. I can look at my emergency contacts. So here we have a number of emergency contacts. We could do it by region or by name. You can see I haven't filled in that much data, and I'll show you where that's done eventually. I can have company news. Here, we're telling you to work from home if possible. Whoops, there we go. And you could, of course, have more details than I have here. So when you create the sample app, it creates the sample without any data. It's up to you to fill in what that news is, what these links are, what your helpful tips are. So I put in some about washing your hands, disinfecting, sneezing, and coughing. If you have any links, like maybe I want to have a link out to the World Health Organization, I can do that. And lastly, an FAQ page. So maybe how, some information that might be helpful. So this is the app that when you download it, it will create this whole thing. To get the data in, you will need the admin app, which looks almost exactly the same. There's one more icon, I guess you could say, or section to update the admin settings. So for this portion, you will need to know some information about your environment. And typically this is somebody like an admin who would do that. Just an FYI. But for instance, if I wanted to add another company contact, like maybe I wanted to add Catherine McSweeney, and her email, we'll just say cat@microsoft.com for now, because I don't know if she wants it publicized or not. And we'll just put in 301 111 1124. Okay. And maybe some comments. She's the one. It's a contact. Okay. So save. And you can see that was automatically added right to that list. And I can create as many contacts as I want. And the same thing works for any of these environments. So if I want to create a new post, I can click on post. I can type in the title, I don't know, latest news on what is it? I don't remember the short name for it. COV, I don't know. Coronavirus 2000. And maybe if I have a link like this one where it's like health here, we'll just take some copy link and we'll stick that in here, or the details, whatever it might be, a blurb. Here is the latest information. When you're typing, when everyone's watching, you can't type. All right. And so there's my latest news. If I go back again, so that was news, helpful tips. I won't keep adding these, but you can see how we can keep adding them if we wanted to. I could go back. And same thing for links. I can create a new link and so forth and so on. So if we go back to that Teams meeting, you'll notice that that request I made, I am home and need help. We used a Power App Flow to actually send that information to this crisis team. So this could be your emergency team, it could be the whole organization, or whomever you would like it to be. And that's actually part of the sample. And as Catherine mentioned, we have a link. In fact, we can put this in the chat window, but we can also send it out. And this is how you set up the entire application, the sample application. I would tell you it takes a little longer than 20 to 25 minutes, but it's less than a couple hours. Probably you could do it in an hour or so. And the other gotcha is that there is a different set of options for the government community cloud versus the commercial cloud. Other than that, it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And now what's really nice is you have a way to implement this very quickly right now when you need it. And you can see here's even a chat in my thing that says here's some. I also had a flow that automates any latest information that was added. So all the latest news was added in here as well. So I can click and read more, and I can further go on. And it's all working in Teams as well as on my mobile device, which you can't see, but I can be running this from home on my mobile device and still be able to react to that information.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ruth.
You're welcome. Let me know if there are any questions.
I don't see any in the chat, but I know we went through this pretty quickly and that questions might come about as you're trying to implement the application. So when we send out those follow-ups, I'll make sure my contact information is included, or you can reach out to your Microsoft account executive who you should know. And with that, we will turn it over to Mitch Jackson.
Give me a second to turn on sharing.
Absolutely.
And close a bunch of windows. Let's get, it's 200, so let's close that one out. And let's get us to Windows Virtual Desktop. And then let's get us to presentation mode. All right. Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. My apologies, everyone. I actually dropped right out. The internet dropped out right as I started sharing.
All good.
Nothing to do with Teams though, right, Mish?
No, my internet dropped out. It's the what happens when you work from home. All right. Okay, so I've got a very short amount of time to talk about a subject that we normally take about 2 hours to cover. All right, this is Windows Virtual Desktop, and I assume everyone here has used a Windows Virtual Desktop before. You know, just go in the chat window and make sure if there's anyone here that hasn't used it before or hasn't had an idea of what a virtual desktop is, just let me know and I'll start covering that. Otherwise, we're going to really go right to virtual desktop and what we present. So at a high level, really, Windows Virtual Desktop is a way of moving your infrastructure, okay, and hosting it in the cloud. So we all know you can have a Citrix environment or a VMware environment, or you can even have a remote desktop session environment. And we can all have virtual desktops, and we can connect from home, and we can VPN in, and we can connect to these virtual desktops, or sometimes we can host a presentation page on the outside. But the problem with this is scale, right? Usually, in the scale scenario, which is what we're about to go through right now, we're asking people to work from home. And normally you build up enough infrastructure to cover typically whoever works from home. So that might be like 10% of your infrastructure or 20% of your infrastructure, right? But it's typically not the scenarios we're running into, or what we kind of run into a few times a year, a snowstorm or some kind of natural disaster, like a fire in California or something along those lines, where all of a sudden we need a lot more services than we're actually providing. And that's really where Windows Virtual Desktop has an edge, or running any of your virtual desktops in the cloud, because you can have your steady state architecture to host your normal remote access users, your people that work from home, or people that want to connect in on weekends. You can host that, but you can also scale up and scale out, right? And that's a big reason why we're doing this, right? So we can get this scale. There's some other kind of nitpicky kind of concerns that we run into, and that's really around handling Office 365, right? People that build virtual infrastructure spend a lot of time trying to optimize disk and things along those lines, and spending a lot of time worrying with profiles to make it so that the experience is consistent every time a user logs in. So Windows Virtual Desktop also addresses that with the purchase that we did of FSLogix that makes profile containers and things along those lines. I'll get into that as we make it through, right? There's been a lot of confusion around availability of Windows Virtual Desktop. We announced it very, very early and then said it was in preview. So I want everyone to know, if you remember anything, that Windows Virtual Desktop is available today, right now, this second, in Azure Public. Azure Public is FedRAMP High. So there's no reason why a government agency, from a compliance standpoint, would be restricted from deploying Windows Virtual Desktop, right? So let's talk about our scenarios, which we just covered. Elastic scenarios where you have to bring on a lot of workers in last minute, interns in the government, we see a lot of that. Obviously, we have employees in the government that for either do temporary active duty or have to work from home for multiple months of the year. And we also have some other things that a lot of people don't think about, and these are specialized workloads. So we have agencies now that are using Windows Virtual Desktop for SAP, right? SAP, right? And other financials apps where you need an unusually large desktop, that doesn't make sense to necessarily have on the floor. And additionally, the advantage of running, a high compute desktop in the cloud is that you can access it from anywhere. So those folks that need these specialized desktops, whether it's AutoCAD or SAP or things along those lines, they typically can't work from home, right? We ask them to go work from home for weeks, and all of a sudden, there's no thing for them to do it because the workload doesn't fit on their laptop. So that's something else we can do that's really important. We get a lot of questions around what we support. And at this time, we even support Windows 7, right? So that's another use case that we see for virtual desktop in government. I have this old application. We're not going to rewrite the application anytime soon. There's no budget for it. But we need to host this old application and make it available to hundreds of users. That's something you can do with Windows Virtual Desktop. But with that said, it supports Windows 10, 7, Server 2019, 2016, 2012, all the stuff that you would expect for any virtualization environment. A lot of people ask me, what is Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session? It is Windows 10 only allows typically 2 connected users, the user on the desktop, and you can kind of switch back and forth to one remote user. Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session removes that requirement. So it allows you to have the Windows 10 operating system, but with hundreds of people connecting to it. So instead of turning a server into a multi-session environment, we actually allow you to take Windows 10 and turn it into a multi-session environment, which helps all those people that have to do desktop imaging and things along those lines. Allows you to keep the same image that you use for the desktop and actually use it in your Windows Virtual Desktop environment without any significant changes. So it's more of like something we do under the hood versus you guys having to cook up something new and different, right? Enabling optimizations for Office 365 Pro Plus. This is what slows Windows virtual deployments down, whether it's on Citrix, our own remote desktop technology, or VMware. In the case of Windows Virtual Desktop, with the FXLogix acquirement, we actually make containers. So that means OneDrive, Teams, Outlook can all work the same way they do on an individual laptop. And it also takes care of a lot of profile management as well. That's the other question we get. How do I deal with profiles, right? It takes forever to log into my virtual desktop. How does that happen, right? How do you fix that? So Windows Virtual Desktop literally creates a user container with FXLogix, and it remaps everything that would be in the default profile to this container. You don't need a specialized file server. You don't need specialized infrastructure. We actually store that directly into Azure Storage Blobs so that you don't have to patch it and maintain like another set of infrastructure to make this work. So this is a key win and a key differentiator, again, for Windows Virtual Desktop. Deploy and scale. So the government in this case is primarily in a few states around the country, but we actually support Windows Virtual Desktop in 54 regions and 140 countries. One of the things that we can do is we can make that virtual desktop infrastructure available to you closer, right? And we found that the closer you can get that virtual desktop, the better the end user experience is. So if your remote telecommuting workers are in California, then we can host Windows Virtual Desktop in California. We can make sure all the portal pages themselves are on East or West Coast, or we can have them load balance from East or West Coast. So again, we can bring that as close as we possibly can and provide a better user experience. And then the flip side of it is scale. And you'll hear me talk about scale, 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 but that's really, really important. We're hosting this in the cloud. So there is an Azure subscription required, and customers are charged based on what you use when you use it. So if you do not need to build an infrastructure to support, let's just say 5,000 users and run that every day because you only have 500 users show up, Windows Virtual Desktop automatically scales up and scales down. So it'll run just the amount of infrastructure required to host based on user demand. So what that means is that effectively you can host Windows Virtual Desktop for a fraction of what you could possibly build it on premises. Because in the end, on premises, you have to build out that storage. You have to have the processing available to you. You know, for some time you could maybe push it out and use it for another application, but fundamentally you have to have that network gear, you have to have the processing, you have to have the storage. So Windows Virtual Desktop allows you to skip a lot of that. All right. And really what we're doing here is we're providing you something that kind of blends the security, right? As well as the flexibility of the cloud, right? So we get a lot of questions around Windows Virtual Desktop, and I know I'm going fast, so we're gonna kind of get to a question and answer session. So just please hold your questions. What we're trying to do here is make sure that you have remote access capability for your legacy applications, stuff that's not a part of Office 365, stuff that only runs on-prem. We're making that available to you in the cloud so that when your user is using Office 365, it's effectively sitting right next to it. It has a very great experience. But when they have to use that on-premise app, we have the ability to do reverse connect, meaning that desktop in the cloud can connect back on premises securely, either using site-to-site VPN or ExpressRoute, right? And it can, and as far as the entire network is concerned, the two work together. So if you have any custom security tools that today only exist on premises, not a problem, right? The security tools can see the virtual desktop directly as if it was just an extension of the network. And that's a huge deal here. Something else that's unique is that we support multiple forms of authentication. So if you want to, you can use Azure Active Directory, which is something that's already set up for Office 365 with Teams. Or you can join the virtual desktops directly to your on-premises Active Directory. So if the security groups rely a lot on group policy, or again, legacy tools that check domain join machines, then your virtual desktops can be a part of that same group, and they can go in a specialized OU just like you do today, right? And you can manage them legacy style just like you do today, even though new units pop in and pop out with scale. So that helps a lot from a deployment perspective, right? Being able to use the same tools, reverse connect, all of those kinds of things. And it removes a lot of blockers to a cloud-based infrastructure system, right? So virtualization hosts of the future, gosh, I'm running out of time. Really, what you had before is you had the old classic remote desktop session host. That's what most people think of, even when we say VDI. They think of that old system where a lot of people are sharing a server, and you get 20 to 30 people to all log on together on that server. But because it was Windows Server, it was never intended to really work that way. And the user interface is not what people are expecting. So you log on to that system and the start menu is different. The buttons on the bottom are different. The way the system behaves with classic applications is different. So the experience, again, is not exactly what you'd expect, which requires you to have a specialized help desk experience, as well as special people to administer them, because the system behaves different. And then there's the newer mechanism of Windows 10 virtual desktop environment. And that works a lot better for the help desk. Even for the users all see the same start menu, the same app, very similar images back and forth, unless you want to make them different. But the flip side to that is that it's Windows 10, and for every user that logs in, we have to spin up another virtual desktop. So if you have 600 people log in, we have 600 virtual desktops. There's actually a lot of waste on an infrastructure perspective when we do that, because there's no sharing, and you literally have, for that period of time, for 600 users, you have 600 copies of Windows. Just the files alone add up to a lot of space. There's really not a lot you can do to share any of that infrastructure. So what we have in the middle is the Windows 10 Enterprise multi-session. Again, it's just an alternate operating system to Windows 10. All we've done is add the server components that allow it to have multiple users terminal in to the same operating system. Otherwise, it's identical. It patches the same way. Applications see it the same way. So it's no different than if you used Windows 10 Pro versus Home. Everyone gets to see that, which makes the whole process easier for the people that are administering it, as well as for the users, because each session sees Windows 10 exactly like your standard images. So the process of building your standard image is exactly the same, right? A lot of questions around licensing. There's two parts to the licensing. The first one is really the kind of licensing that's required for all kinds of virtual environments, and that's just the base Windows license, right? And any kind of remote desktop or VDA license. And in this case, we actually include the Windows Virtual Desktop licensing as a part of your M365 and your Windows 10 Enterprise licensing. So if you have either M365, any version, or Windows 10 Enterprise, we include it there. You'll notice that there's no Windows CAL, there's no Windows 7 licensing here. And that is an important concept that everyone needs to know. Windows Virtual Desktop licensing comes from M365 or Windows 10. So while we do allow you to downgrade, and we do have Windows 7 VMs that you can pull up, the licensing, the core licensing, comes from M365 or Windows 10, right? From a server scenario, you could also license it through the remote desktop CAL, right, with software insurance. But not a lot of people have a lot of those. Okay, FS Logic, I'm going to have to skip just because I'm running out of time. I'd also like you guys to know that if you already have Citrix, then we can actually make Windows Virtual Desktop a part of that existing Citrix desktop environment. Whether it's Citrix Cloud or Citrix Workspaces, and even older versions, there are plugin versions for even the old presentation server and things along those lines, which is an important concept here because you might already have an investment in Citrix, but you might not have the additional infrastructure to scale up. So what we're allowing you to do with the Citrix partnership is keep the images, keep the infrastructure on-prem just like it is, and then add us as an extension. So that's a huge deal. There might be, depending upon your license scenario, there might be additional licensing that you have to do with Citrix, so please contact them. But we have provided the technical bridge, and we're seeing customers do that now. And we're announcing VMware Horizon extension as well. So if you have a VMware deployment on premises, again, we can actually pop into VMware or VMware Horizon Cloud and be used for the raw infrastructure. So that's a pretty amazing thing. So if you guys need to scale up and add another 200-300 VMs beyond what your infrastructure can take because of everything going on with the federal government right now, this is an option for you guys. But like Citrix, and by the way, this is available in preview right now. It is not generally available. That's why it says available H1. But again, if you need to scale up, this is yet another way to do so, right? So I would love to be able to come and talk with each and one of you about Windows Virtual Desktop. We have a very limited time to kind of get this presentation going. We typically spend an hour to 2 hours going through the detailed architecture and talking about how we can use your own VMs and things along those lines. So the next steps are, obviously these links here, and then I'm going to move it right to question and answer. So give me a second to get to the chat window. Oh, look at that. I don't actually see any questions. All right. Well, I'm going to hand it off to Alexandria Cole.
I think one question just popped up by Daniel Fletcher saying any on-prem options?
For Windows Virtual Desktop? So you'll hear us announce at Ignite, Windows Virtual Desktop will be available on Azure Stack. Today, if you want to do this on premises, we ask you to use our standard Windows RDS remote desktop services. It's very similar in technology. It's just the difference is Windows Virtual Desktop, of course, automates the deployment and installation of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitch. And thanks everyone for hopping on today. I hope you all found some value out of it. I did want to let everyone know that next Wednesday, there will be another specific team session with some of our subject matter experts, and they'll be going over things such as web application versus rich client, licensing, meeting scheduling, and accessibility and translation. And then they'll also have an open Q&A, and it'll be a live event. So that's another great session to attend as well. And we will be sending this recorded session out afterwards. So thanks everyone for hopping on today, and I hope you all have a great weekend.